All right, joining us now, former sheriff, Milwaukee County, a senior advisor to America First Policies Action, Sheriff David Clarke. Hey, Sheriff Clarke, great to have you back, man.
Thanks a lot, and hello to your listeners again.
So, Sheriff, I got to get your comment on what Mac just said from Richmond, one of our callers. You just heard that. He said, look, this whole confirmation process with Judge Kavanaugh, he worked in the Bush White House, so did his wife. Where's the Bushes? What do you think?
Well, we're talking about politics, and in politics, don't expect anybody to have your back. You can't trust anybody in this political environment, especially Washington, D.C. So when you ask where are the Bushes, they're hiding somewhere. They're hiding somewhere trying to figure out how to hate on Trump some more. That's what's going on with them. I think it's shameful. But, like I said, you got to expect this sort of thing in politics. You have to have your own back. Don't expect anybody to have yours.
Okay, so some of the comments that are being made by the left are appalling. Of course, it doesn't get any play in the media. You can imagine, Sheriff Clarke, if Republicans were saying any of this stuff. But we've got this one lady in Georgetown here in Washington, D.C., where I am, says that white GOP senators deserve miserable deaths after Kavanaugh hearing. Then she did a profanity-laced Twitter tirade against Kavanaugh, calling him a rapist and a perjurer. She described the Republicans as a death cult and filthy swine. And she's teaching at Georgetown University. What's the deal here, Sheriff?
Well, you know what the deal is here. They get away with whatever they want, and then when something mild is said by somebody on our side, they go for the throat. I mean, look at this associate or assistant dean at Catholic University said something, tweeted some things, and got suspended by the university. And the university has a right to do that. But at the same time, what she said was nothing close to what, some of the language used by the people on the left. And, our side, when I say our side, is qualify that. The conservatives, we're tired of the tactics used by the left, but instead of sitting back and whining, what we need to do, and getting outraged, what we need to do is define better counter measures, counter strategies to deal with this stuff, more effective ones when I say different counter strategies, because to sit back and point it out is one thing, and that needs to be done because the lying liberal media won't do their job. But when, individuals say some of the things that they do, like we're talking about, somebody called the other day Ms. Ford a skank. I think it was the guy from Fox News who got fired. That was him. Called her a skank. That's a little over the top. There's no doubt about that. But he got fired. But then you look at the New York Times, who hired that one woman who said she hated white men. So they get away with whatever they want. But one of the ways that we can counter that at ground level in fighting back is to make sure that we get this Judge Brett Kavanaugh confirmed. That's job one. I need people to stay focused on the task, and it's getting Judge Kavanaugh confirmed. What he's been put through, and he said it best, I think, when he said this thing has turned into a joke. I wonder if these senators on the Senate Judiciary Committee, and I'm talking about both the GOP and the Democrats, I wonder if they're proud of themselves as to how they conducted this search and destroy mission, which is another phrase that Judge Kavanaugh used. That's what it's become. This man has been put through enough. His family's been put through enough. This cruel and unusual punishment as far as I'm concerned, that's prohibited by the 8th Amendment to the Constitution. So all these constitutional issues that are involved in this, guilty before proven innocent, the rule of law, due process has been trashed. The rule of law has been thrown out. We live in a country where you don't have to prove your innocence, but all of a sudden now when it comes to Judge Kavanaugh, he's got to prove he's innocent of these charges. So this whole thing has been bastardized. I say enough is enough. I was disappointed when Chuck Grassley initially moved the date from September 25th, and he moved it to the Thursday, and then they moved it again. You're all trying to appease the Democrats. Nothing's going to appease them. You see what they're doing now. The Democrats now come up with a list of 25 people they want interviewed. Their job, I don't know if I know Mitch McConnell understands it. He said it in the well of the Senate the other day. But, appeasing the Democrats. And why, John? Think about this. 3 senators, Flake, Murkowski, and Collins reportedly went to the president and said, "Hey, we need political cover to vote. Why don't you just do this FBI investigation so we can get by this?" Why would you need political cover to do the right thing? But see, that's what politics in the swamp has become. Mm-hmm. Doing the right thing would have just been holding the vote. But no, they need political cover. I think this is sick.
Sheriff Clarke, I really appreciate what you're saying and sharing that perspective, because I hadn't thought of it that way. And you're right. And what happens, here's the problem with being in D.C. all the time like me, is you take that for a grain of salt because it is kind of the way the swamp is. So I never really reacted to that, but you're 100% on target. Why would you need political cover to vote for somebody who has false allegations against them? And I say they're false because they're not proven, they're not corroborated, there's no witnesses, and the witnesses that were identified either denied it or refuted it. So you're right, Sheriff Clarke. What political cover do you need for that? You don't need anything. You just need, look, there's no evidence. It's incredible. And, now I think Jeff Flake is going to vote no. He's got some, and I said this earlier today, he's got some image in his head where he's going to be, lionized. He's going to be the darling of the New York Times, and he'll be, featured on CNN as some great free thinker or something. So it really comes down to Collins and Murkowski. I mean, that's what it comes down to. What do you think they're going to do on Saturday, Sheriff Clarke?
Well, I don't know what to think in terms of what they're going to do. These people, they flip-flop around. They don't vote their conscience. It's really hard to say. I mean, we all thought John McCain, may his soul rest in peace, was going to vote to eliminate Obamacare, and he came in there and cast the deciding vote to keep it alive. So It's hard to say. These politicians, you don't know where they're coming from, and it's all of them in the swamp. And they change their mind by the minute. So in terms of Collins and Murkowski, probably whoever gets to them last, that's the way they're going to vote.
You know what? That might very well be it. So I guess you can say if the FBI report is released, we think it'll be this evening or early tomorrow. If there's nothing in it, then they have the whatever it is political cover they needed, and you would think this nomination would go through. Let me just ask you this. If it doesn't go through, what type of effect do you think that's going to have, Sheriff David Clarke, on Republican turnout on November 6th, only 33 days away?
It has to have an effect because political fatigue is setting in, John. You know that.
Yes, sir.
We've done everything, we, again, conservatives, the voters, the base, we've done everything we've been asked to do. We elected Donald Trump president of the United States. He has not been allowed from day one to put his vision into effect, his vision to make America great again. They've stalled him. They've thwarted him with resistance, not through the traditional political institutions that we have these political discussions and debate in, the halls of Congress, maybe the courts once in a while, the media, because we can't count on them. But if this doesn't go through, this is going to have a devastating impact on this country because there are going to be good people in the future. I mean, where do they turn? I mean, this Amy Coney Barrett was one of the finalists for this job. She's got to be looking at this, and she's a brilliant jurist, by the way, but she's got to be looking at this. She's got 7 kids. She's a wife. She's a mom. She's a judge. She's got to be saying, man, there is no way on God's given earth I would put my family through that because, trust me, if they nominate her the next time, and I'm thinking maybe like a Ginsburg replacement, but they'll play on her. They can't play the sexual impropriety card. They'll play the race card because she's a white female. And they'll pull people out of the woodwork that said she said the N-word one time, and she said she hates blacks. And so they just trash our people. And that's the effect. Your question was, will it affect turnout? It might. I hope it doesn't. We have to realize there's no finish line to this political fight. The Dems never give up. And, every day is a new fight. We have to be prepared for this mentally because it is fatiguing.
Has Mitch McConnell has been right there the whole time. He made 2 fiery floor speeches. I'm not a McConnell fan. That's way out of his comfort zone. Is not what he does. Why do you think he's been so adamant here? and so different.
Well, he knows what's going on. He knows what they're capable of, but he shouldn't allow it to happen. So I agree. Those were some fiery speeches. It was good stuff to hear out of Mitch McConnell, but they should not have allowed Brett Kavanaugh to twist in the wind. This man is suffering. His family's suffering. His reputation is trashed. McConnell should have ended this fiasco and this charade probably a week ago, probably 2 weeks ago.
Right. Well, I thought he should have had a vote last week because then, we'll let the chips fall where they may. But it is interesting that I think Murkowski and Collins, they went to the president, they went to the White House looking for cover. So we'll see what happens. I don't think now they've got anywhere to go. If there's nothing in this FBI report that corroborates any of these false allegations, I don't know how you look the camera in the eye when you're asked, why did you vote no, and give any sort of an answer. And you know what's going to happen, right, Sheriff Clarke? Whatever is in the FBI report, the Democrats are going to say they need more information. Not enough people have been interviewed. There's no scope of the interview. They didn't interview Dr. Ford. They didn't interview her husband, her counselor, her friend, somebody on an airplane, right? I mean, whatever it is in there, they're going to say it isn't enough.
It's endless.
It's endless.
It's endless what they'll do, and we know that. And Chuck Grassley knew that at the time. I think they opened up a door for the Democrats to crawl through by having this FBI extended background investigation. The Democrats are calling it different things: a probe, an FBI probe. No, it's not. An FBI criminal investigation. No, it's not. There's no criminality involved here. Everybody knows this. This goes well beyond. This turned into a proctology exam, for heaven's sakes, for Brett Kavanaugh, and that's not part of the advice and consent process. I think it's a shame, I really do, as to the trashing of the Constitution and the right under the Constitution for the Senate to conduct this, because it's no longer about qualifications. You mentioned at the start of this segment, the man is well qualified. Nobody argues that. Not one Democrat has said he's not qualified. But obviously the big threat here is they're trying to protect the court because it's always been a firewall for them where they can't win the public support for their crazy ideas, when they can't win votes in the Congress because they don't have the power. They've always used the courts as that firewall. And, of course, the United States Supreme Court is the big firewall, and they're concerned about things like Roe v. Wade, which I don't even know why they're concerned about it anyway. I don't see any drastic change in that decision. Maybe some minor things, that might not go that far. But we still shouldn't do this because of how a person might decide or might opine on a decision before the Supreme Court. We should not do this. This is not fair. This is not right. As a country, obviously we're all sitting back here in horror watching this thing, but from a morality and ethical standpoint, is this how we treat fellow human beings, for heaven's sakes?
Wow. It's really unbelievable. And, with one of our callers before, the real issue here with voting him down is not only the personal injustice to this man, because listening to his testimony, Sheriff Clarke, as a man, and then looking at his wife and his mother, I mean, it was just, my stomach turned. I was just sick over the whole thing. But you're going to basically reward the Democrats' behavior here. You're going to reward everything they've done, including Dianne Feinstein sitting on this for 60 days. You're going to say, okay, let's reward the way you have turned this into a clown show. And as Senator Kennedy from Louisiana says, a grotesque charade. That's going to be their reward. And then no matter who you nominate, just like you said, whether it be Amy Coney Barrett or someone else, the Democrats are going to trash them into oblivion. And so we're just going to have a repeat of this. So it's just gross. You're right about that.
Yeah, and I think too that, with Dianne Feinstein, okay, Tom Cotton, Senator Cotton, and I know him, he's a good man. He's called for an ethics investigation on how she handled this thing and how this thing may have gotten leaked into the press. But, nothing will come of that. I mean, Washington, D.C. has turned into where not much gets done, but they're always starting new investigations. And the investigations don't go anywhere. That investigation against Dianne Feinstein, that body of the Senate will not hold her accountable for what happened here. Nobody will be held accountable for doxing those three members of the GOP members of the Senate Judiciary Committee with their personal information getting out. And someone, I read a report, and it hasn't been verified, keep that in mind, but there may have been somebody out of Maxine Waters' office that did that. But nothing happens to these people in Washington, D.C. So, people, all they do is call for an investigation. We're calling for an investigation, but nothing will happen to her.
Nothing's going to happen. Nothing ever happens. Sheriff David Clarke, we're out of time. I want to thank Sheriff Clarke for being with us. Always great to have him, a former sheriff of Milwaukee County. You can follow him. Go to his Facebook page. Follow him at Twitter at David Clarke. Sheriff, thanks for being with us, man.